Just for those who are catching up a little bit later, welcome to our District Digital Forum. Tonight we are talking about photos and video and that sort of stuff, and how we as church use these things effectively. It is not just my boring self. I'm being joined by Emily, our district comms person, and we'll be taking it in turns or chatting across various kind of subjects that to do with photos and sharing as church. And so, without further ado, I'll hand you over to Emily. Good evening,
Keith.
Emily.
Hello. So Mark and I, in planning this session, set the aim that really we hope to encourage churches and circuits and other organisations within our district to share photos and video regularly. So why might a church share a photo or a video clip? I think one of the main reasons why a church would do that is to make people stop their scroll. So we all do it when you open up your phone, you're on social media, or you're on the computer. It's very easy to just be flicking through, scrolling down. But something visual is usually something that will stop somebody from scrolling and kind of grab their attention. So churches and circuits might want to encourage people to stop their scroll by opening a window into the church's atmosphere and activities. So there's the old adage of a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so that kind of window into the church's activities is really valuable for people because it can say a lot more than we might say in our own words. People also have their own individual perceptions of photos, so that it might be a photo that you share says one thing to you, but somebody else picks up on another detail of it that they find really attractive. We mentioned in our previous session when we chatted about Facebook a couple of months ago that sharing photos of the church space and what is going on in and around the church can help to remove anxiety from new people who are interested in coming but perhaps have a bit of anxiety about what places might look like, how do I get there, who is going to be there, and all those sorts of questions. And it also introduces some familiarity. So if you are a person who's on Facebook and you see a church space or a play group or a coffee morning several times, you become familiar with what that church space looks like and the sort of atmosphere that the church is sharing. And again, that helps to reduce some of that anxiety. It might be that a church also wants to share a general idea. So, coming up to the summer, we might be thinking about church picnics or garden parties. Some churches local to us have a trip out to the beach where they'll invite people to go along. So, sharing a photo of something more general like that can really, again, help to introduce some of the mood of the event or community that you might be holding. And I know that some of the churches in our district also open up reflective spaces um, during the week for people to meditate and to reflect on things. And so you might also share a photo that shares a bit of the mood of that sort of space as well. So I've covered a number of different activities there. And I'm aware that sometimes it's really helpful to have an idea of what sort of photos you might share to promote a particular event or activity or piece of content, as we talked about in our Facebook session. So for sharing information about church activities, you might post a photo or a video clip of the outside of the church building. It could be a space inside the church. If you are hosting a play group, you might share photos of the room in its state of readiness. So, with all of the toys out, looking really welcoming. Rob's laughing because he's already done that. You might share a photo of the storytime book that you're going to read that morning. Or if you're trying to attract mums on a cold, wet day, you might share the coffee and the biscuits that you've got out that morning, or that you'll have out the following morning if you've taken a photo previously. If it's a coffee morning, you might show the people in that particular community. You might share a photo of volunteers that are serving there who are smiling. But I suppose a good question to ask is, what are the sort of photos that attract me to an event? And then you can emulate some of those things and ask some of those questions when you're thinking about the photo that you want to share to promote your church activities. If it's a general idea, so I've already mentioned sort of garden parties and picnics, you might be able to find a photo of some picnic benches or a picnic laid out on some grass or a nice beach. Obviously, if it's something like a beach trip, make sure it's an appropriate beach. Don't attempt to share photos of Bondi Beach or anywhere like that, because people will spot stuff like that. And then if it's a broader sort of reflective question or a reflective passage that you're sharing, you might find a really generic photo of nature. It might be a really spectacular view that encourages people to think about their perspective, or it could be wet weather if it's I don't know, a post about grief or something like that. So there are more sort of broader photos that you could share for reflective pieces. And then considerations for whoever is posting a photo. I think a good question to ask is always, what is the purpose of the post? And does the photo support it? So, for example, with a coffee morning, the purpose of the post typically would be to invite people to come into that space. So, does the photo make people feel welcome? Does it make people feel like you are good at hospitality? Those sorts of questions. It's really important for what we're sharing to be authentic and show the reality of the space that we're inviting people into. I think we see quite a lot of places use really polished photos, and for a time that was very trendy, and that was absolutely the right thing to do. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is that people who are using social media are tending to prefer pages now that are much more authentic and much less polished, because there's a recognition that we need to move towards what is real, so that we understand what to expect when we go to places. And I think also have that confidence to show who you are as well and what your church space is like. Because it might seem a bit counterintuitive. In some areas, there are a number of churches that people can pick to go to for coffee mornings, for church, for playgroups. But actually, there's often space for us all. So don't be afraid to show what your environment is like, because there's a good chance that somebody will be really, really attracted to what you're doing. We also, of course, have to consider safeguarding. So if there are people in the photos that you would like to share, you need to have their consent to publish that photo, whether that is online or in print or both. There is a digital safeguarding guidance booklet on our website, on Mark's digital church page. And we can, of course, link to that. Actually, when Mark's speaking, I'll put the link in the chat as well, in case you want to have a look at that. We also need to consider GDPR. Most contexts have their own sort of GDPR policy, but in terms of keeping and storing photos, I keep hearing a term of keeping them for 2 years and then deleting them. Seems to be a popular time frame, but do double check that in your own setting. And then, of course, there's the consent of use of the photo itself as well. So you need to have the consent of whoever has taken that photo to use it. If you're Googling and looking for a more professional photo, you need to have the consent of the professional photographer or whoever has uploaded that online to share it. If you don't, then you can infringe copyright law, which obviously we really don't want to be doing. So Popular spaces to be able to download stock photos include Unsplash and Pixabay. And they host a whole range, hundreds and thousands of photos that you can download and use for free. You could also use your own photos or photos from other people in the church, as long as you have their permission. And Mark has also uploaded to our website a folder that has a number of appropriate photos and templates for sharing on social media that might be helpful to you as well. Did you want to add anything to any of that, Mark?
Yeah, but basically, thank you, Emily, for sharing so far. And I've added templates and some stock of my own stock photos, because, and they might not be the best quality, but it's just to kind of give examples of how you can kind of take a photo and adjust it to publicity, or to kind of help enable like a social media post or anything like that. And yeah, I'm happy for these to be used for Methodist Church purposes. So yeah, please feel free to add those to your bank of photos. I think there's only one uh, photo maybe from my existing setting. So I'll mention Rob again. I think it's from one of our coffee mornings, but again, it's only just the coffee and like a side plate and things like that. So nothing else is noticeable, but it looks, dare I say, authentically Methodist in its approach. But yeah, that's it, I think. And thank you for the nod towards the digital church page as well, and the kind of various resources that we're trying to kind of build up a bit of a bank of resources there collectively across all these other bits. Thank you, Emily, for that. I'm going to drop you off the spotlight, and it'll come to me, and I'm going to just show a basic PowerPoint really. And let's just load that up. And can we see that okay? Just a general nod, thank you. And basically, I'm kind of looking at the hows and the wheres. And as we think about how might a church share, I thought I'd better start very practically. And so it's really good that when we're kind of coming to events, when we're thinking about church activities, to kind of make sure that we have somebody allocated, somebody volunteered to say, actually, that can be the photo person. It doesn't have to be somebody with a big tabard and a big kind of umbrella or anything like that to sort of say, I'm the photographer. Though in public groups, it may actually be helpful if it's in a big event or otherwise, but usually in a small church setting, just to kind of volunteer one person maybe with a camera or otherwise, just to yeah, just to be aware, just to notice some opportune moments to take photos of, or the props, or as we said, the toddler group furniture, as it were. But the next element of this is actually just giving it a bit of thought as well, of thinking, actually, well, what are we going to take photographs with? And I know that seems very straightforward, but actually, I mean, I've got a digital SLR, which is a fantastic camera, but actually it's quite lumbersome. I've got to remember to take it places, and I've got to then kind of take it off the memory card and then get it into a format that's good enough and send it on to someone else. And actually nowadays, if you've got a decent smartphone, sometimes the quality of the lens and the data captured is actually much better than anything that a novice or amateur photographer can do. But so just be aware of kind of what are we asking of people, and kind of are we equipping them? And I think that the other element there does kind of fringe upon about safeguarding GDPR, how you're storing that kind of stuff. But then just to be able to have somebody allocated with the right gear to be able to pass it on, and to know where they're going to send it on to. The next element of this is, what is the end purpose of, well, why do we need to take photographs? And so the how, kind of how we're taking these photographs, will depend on actually, well, what are we intending to use these with? And so if it's just advertising, that's fine, but it may also be about kind of the atmospherics, the kind of the atmosphere, what are we trying to convey, what we're trying to communicate through using a photograph like that. And there's a very practical element to this. and I don't know if you've done this before, but when I've taken a photograph, I I personally have a bank of photos designed for PowerPoint. So I'll turn my phone on its side to take some lovely landscape shots, and I imagine where the words for a song might appear so I can kind of frame it correctly. But then there are other times where I'm thinking, but I quite like this shot as well, in case if I need to do a poster. And a lot of posters are often portrait rather than landscape. So I'll take a few photos, both landscape and portrait, just to cover my base in case if I need to kind of have different intentions of using the photo at the end. And so being prepared at this point just with the camera can really help us to be equipped for the next stage. And I do mention about communicate something of interest already, but there may also be, if you really fancy, having focal points and what you're actually going to have in focus in the photo as well. But I think that's, if you're into that sort of thing, you're into that sort of thing. If you just want to basically cover the picture, that's also fine. Keeping this in mind about the practicalities, you may also try to, if you're taking a very big picture, or rather your end intention is to have something that is very big, you might want to think about the overall resolution of the photo that you're taking. And so in most cases, if you're just doing an A3, A4 poster, that's fine. But if you're wanting to do an A1 or A2 poster, then you need to make sure that you're actually taking a very high quality photo that isn't kind of blurred or anything like that. So you might need to even think about having a tripod or something like that, which is going to help you get the best out of your photography. But again, your end goal is important when you're thinking about how we physically taking these pictures, because it depends on what the purpose is. And on the slideshow here, I've just kind of got an example here that Instagram photos tend to be quite square, quite kind of standard square, whether that's profile photo or the general picture. But the banner across on Facebook is going to be different, and so as well as on X as well. And so I've just got very basic and boring kind of dimensions there for folks who you'll see that there's a bit of a difference. And if looking at pixel sizes and things isn't your thing, I found a little kind of pictorial demonstration of these sizes and spaces too. And so you just might be needing to think about actually, well, what platform are we actually sharing these pictures as well? And the great thing is that Instagram and Facebook and Threads, we haven't got Threads on here as an example, they're all part of the same company. And so actually when you take a photograph and share a photograph in Instagram, there are ways in which you can share that immediately onto Facebook. So as long as you kind of cover the base with Instagram, then actually that kind of file type and resolution will kind of carry itself over through to Facebook, and you don't have to worry about resizing and things like that. So you just need to keep that in mind, even at the early point of taking your photo, depending on what are you wanting for this. And if you're not sure, then I would just take a couple of photos landscape, a couple of photos portrait, and always allow a little bit more space than what you think. So you can crop it or squidge it, a technical term, squidge it into the slide, or cut off, crop the slide if you're doing it on a PowerPoint or otherwise. So I hope that's of help. Just again, practicality, think about your surroundings, politeness and permissions about people. You might be taking a brilliant photo, but you are still kind of there as church or otherwise. So don't be rude to people. Say, oh, get out of the way. I've come across wedding photographers and people like that before, which don't make it easy. Anyway, but also consider lighting. If you are finding it actually, it looks a bit blurred or a little bit pixelated, it might just be that actually the photo that you're trying to take is a little bit too dark. And so physically having lighting behind it, or likewise, you can have the opposite problem, that if you're trying to take a photograph with the sun directly behind through a lovely window, it might change the light quality again, and you'll actually have a very shadowy and really low contrast photo, sorry, high contrast photo, and it'll look quite rubbish. So you've got to be careful of where things are. And I would say if you can be cheeky, you could maybe just move things around a little bit to kind of position things nicely for a nice photo. And especially if before anyone else has arrived, just to kind of make yourself a nice cuppa, or do this just to kind of help portray that atmosphere that is genuine, as Emily said, but just to kind of help think about what are we trying to show in these pictures. So moving then to from taking the photo to the software, um, there's there's quite an open way of doing this, because I mean nowadays even you can even do a lot of this stuff on your phone, if on a smartphone that is, but you can use kind of, I want to say, domestic programs. I'm suggesting things like Microsoft, as well as more kind of expert pieces of software, more quite unique, like Canva, which Canva offer a free registry to use it as a freebie, but you can also subscribe and go a little bit further. Adobe Photoshop or Design or Adobe is a subscribed service, and it costs you many more pennies. So I doubt everybody is going to go onto the kind of subscriber level, but I even genuinely find on the go I can still kind of use PowerPoint whilst it is intended for a PowerPoint presentation. I can layer my photo with the right font, with the right font box and information into a PowerPoint slide, and then take a screen grab of that slide and share that as a picture onto social media. And so I don't even have to take it off my phone in order to deal with being creative in that sort of way. I realize that's not everyone's cup of tea, and that might go over people's heads, but all I'm saying is you could maybe use the tools that are available to you on your desktop, or that you already have for church purposes already. For those who do projection and things, you can use PowerPoint in a way that you can use the various layers of layering up a slide to create a general picture for social media. I have done that on more than one occasion. So software is a big, broad category, but there can be kind of workarounds and shortcuts, which is why, in reference to the bank of social media posts and bits and pieces, I've created those in PowerPoint just to give you a very quick demonstration. But I've created them in a few different dimensions, whether it's a banner or whether it's an Instagram post or Facebook or otherwise. I've also included just the raw photos in case if you just want to have a play and do it your own way, you're more than happy to use that and do that. We then kind of come to where might a church share, and this kind of feeds into kind of where do we find community, where is the best place to kind of use this stuff once we've created it, once we've kind of got our details, our poster created. Where do we kind of put this thing? And I think it's this same message that I've maybe have said before, is think about where do we regularly visit ourselves in our volunteer roles, in what, in our capacity as a church volunteer, logging into our church account. We may just find that we've found the kind of place to be. It might be on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or X, I mean, but sometimes it actually requires us to do a little bit of experimenting and sort of say, actually, do we get the most kind of responses from in this direction, or do we give Instagram a go, or do we give X a go? And it's just about kind of working out where our local community uses what. And you might have other groups within Facebook, or even other apps that local communities use. And so once you've taken your photo, it might just be a case of just if you know your crowd, if you know your community, just run with it. But if you're thinking, gosh, these aren't really hitting anybody, people aren't really kind of responding at all to these, we're not getting anybody mentioning these things, it's again a question of just saying, are we actually trying to communicate these in the right place? And so it's again just a bit of an encouragement to look for where are people kind of talking within our community, physically in our community, and where are they, what kind of digital stuff are they using? And once we've found that kind of place, try to be regular and consistent, to be somebody who is present, who is kind of a regular, and that you are a trusted I don't want to say trusted, but you are, yeah, you are consistent in being logged on regularly, so that messages are going to be answered, and when there's a query or a comment under the poster, you can say, oh, of course, well, we mean this, by the way. And you may also find that these pieces of information, um, so these posters and these posts may want to go out at a certain time depending on your audience. So if you are if you are designing this poster for a family, then actually are the families likely to log on and kind of check Facebook, and therefore you've got to be thinking now, is this kind of a moment after school pickup, or immediately before school pickup, or we don't really want to be kind of advertising this at 11 o'clock at night, maybe, or definitely if we're trying to kind of reach people in the workplace, we don't want to be doing that between hours 8 and 5. If we wanted to be reaching older teenagers, actually there'll be a cut off there for school time through to bedtime, and so there'll be like golden opportunities to share these things at relevant times depending on your audience. So that really does kind of just require some thinking out. In regards to the content, again, Emily's covered some of this, but basically cover the basics. This is going to sound really silly, but make sure you have the what, the where, and the when. There have been a number of times where a church has kind of said, "Oh, look, we've got this poster," and I've just sort of said, "It doesn't tell you the venue, or it doesn't have the time, and it looks really good. It looks really, really good. But if it doesn't have the most basic information on it, then unfortunately it's going to be a bit pointless." And so make sure that we cover the basics in those posters and posts, because it just helps with our kind of authenticity and kind of trustworthiness, that if we can get the basic information correctly, then people are likely to trust us. And I don't even mean like a capital T trust. It just means that people are going to see that actually we know what we're doing, and if we can just jump through the hoops and get the basic information right, that will all help. Keep to the brand. I put this in little inverted commas because I know that in the church we don't really like people talking business speak, or some of us don't like talking business speak and think, oh gosh, we don't like the church. But actually, the church doing brand, I mean this in the sense of, again, it's about consistency, but with how we use our fonts, our pictures, our colours, even. And if you're pondering about this, for example, the Methodist Church has its own kind of branding page on the Methodist new website, and so it says when using the Methodist Church logo, and it gives us guidelines what sort of font to have the Methodist Church written in, which I think is Franklin Gothic book and Franklin Gothic demi. And so the Methodist word is in the demi, and so it's thicker and fatter, and this isn't just about kind of corporate of somebody kind of having a certain way with the words. It's actually, again, as Emily says, about visual clues, and so to be able to spot our content and go, oh yeah, that's the Methodist Church. Oh yeah, that's that church there. So to kind of keep in mind like consistency. Again, unfortunately, I've seen places and even websites where their fonts change throughout one page and it looks very visually messy. And so to kind of keep to our brand is, again, just quite helpful to the viewer, and to be able to communicate consistency even without saying, oh, we're consistent. It just, with having this kind of information shared, is really helpful in that kind of way. Keep it professional. And again, this maybe sounds quite obvious, but if you are there as a volunteer representing the church on Facebook or in these places, then it's really important to make sure that we are keeping ourselves respectful and professional. And that may kind of flow into being informal and a bit cheeky, but it still needs to be sensible and above board, and things like this. So you can be informal to sort of say, oh, when you're grabbing a cuppa, why don't you think about us, or ... And again, just to reiterate what Emily said about being authentic and genuine, because I think it's really important that we are still us. We're not trying to pretend to be a mega church or dot dot dot. We are just who we are, and I don't mind. I think people are much more open to us trying to be authentic rather than trying to be something that we're not. But again, Emily's mentioned that. Keep it fresh. I think this is also key, that when we're if we are regularly posting things day on day on day, it's maybe good to kind of mix it up a little bit, do things a little bit differently. Sometimes, like, rather than it just being yet another poster, another picture of just like a coffee morning, your first one might be, here's a poster. The second month in, you might sort of say, here's what you missed, or here's a picture from our latest coffee morning. And here's the dates for the next meeting. And then to sort of say, and looking ahead, this is something else. Or it could even be kind of asking a sort of question of like, what are you finding yourself doing on a Saturday morning? Why don't you come to? And then put a poster up. And so to kind of break it down, rather than just being a poster, it just being, this is what's happened, to look ahead to thinking about, actually, this is what it could entail. Or this is the sort of stuff that goes on collectively in this place. I think that may be everything on there. Yes, I think that's everything. Consistency. Yeah. So I hope that's kind of given us a little bit of an understanding of how we can use photos and the way in which we can kind of share them, take them, and equips us to sort of think how we would use them. And I'm going to stop the recording and then
Can
open
I
it.
add a couple
Oh,
of
good.
bits
Oh,
on
yes,
that?
of course, Emily. 1 second. I'll just
Just there was just a few things that you mentioned that I thought might be worth adding a couple of bits to. So you mentioned tripods for taking photos.
Yes.
You can buy tripods for smartphones. So often it's like a selfie stick tripod package. They're not very expensive. Oh, and to my left, yeah, they don't have to be very expensive, but they can be useful. And if you're thinking about recording video clips, sometimes when I've been recording for a while, my hands get a bit wobbly. Obviously, using a tripod takes all of that out of it, which is great.
And you can just get these so that they can just fit onto an existing tripod as well. So
Yeah,
if you've already got a tripod, or lying around somewhere, then it does just kind of fit in. You just got to make sure it actually genuinely fits the phone
yeah,
itself. This one doesn't at the moment. Carry
yeah.
on.
And then when you talked about programs for editing photos, obviously you can often upload, the raw photo straight away onto social media. Instagram obviously was a social media that was designed and created for sharing photos more so than Facebook, which was created more for community. So Instagram is well worth having a look at because there are filters on there and there are other ways that you can edit the photos. And it's quite user friendly because it's designed to be used on your phone. So that can be a good way to get into just playing around with photo editing.
Mm.
And then Canva, as you say, has some functions on there for photo editing. If you are a charity, you can access their premium subscription, which would be £10 a month. You can access that for free. So of course, all of our churches and circuits will be able to access Canva for free. You may need to share the license if there are other churches on the same charity number as you. But of course, you can sort that out easily enough. And then finally, when you were mentioning some of the fonts and logos and just keeping things on brand, we as a district, for all of our communications, have brand guidelines. And it might be that some of our circuits do as well. So if you are wanting to create a poster or anything like that, it's just worth checking to see if you have any brand guidelines in place. If you don't and you want to set some up, drop me an email and I can just go through with you what I did when I put ours together, because it's quite straightforward. And it is actually really helpful to have things in place that just give everybody, those guidelines for when they're putting things together in your church.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. And yeah, we were two of the 3 or 4 people who would put the district guidelines together. And I'm sure you can either kind of use that, copy that, or add on to that in your own kind of local church sort of way. The Methodist Church does have a branding booklet somewhere as well. I kind of found once upon a time, and I don't know if you'll notice this now, but I'll mention it. And including I've used this sort of idea on part of the PowerPoints, is that with the Methodist orb, our kind of logo, they use elements of the orb as part of their branding. And so there's going to be moments of where if there's kind of like a line going across the screen, I'm trying to do this in mirror version, and basically it will be like the same angle as the orb, and that they'll use that kind of elements of the main kind of Methodist orb as elements of their branding, which it kind of, yeah, it's quite interesting of how they're using one thing to inspire and kind of impact the other. As well as colours as well. It's really good to have like a colour template and a colour kind of palette to think about ways in which you're going to kind of cover things. And as a district, we've got our district logo, and those kind of colours feed into other parts of our website and bits and pieces. So it's just helpful to have these kind of things in mind as we are creating these sort of things and standardizing things. Or you might want to go to seasonal things where you're kind of going to say, actually, through Christmas we have this color palette, autumn this color palette, Easter this color palette, and just kind of use these things to the best of our abilities, really, and just have fun as well, have a bit of a play, and see where you go. I forgot to mention one thing. If you are using domestic software, I say domestic software, I mean like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, try and get rid of the squiggles. So if you're doing a screen grab of a Word document and there's a spelling mistake or a grammar issue, I've seen this on so many posts that somebody's taken a screen grab, brilliant, of the document. If that works for you, that's great. But try and get it to not have the little red spelling mistake or the blue lines or the green squiggles, because it just kind of cries out that you've just done it exactly where you've done it on Word or anything like that. But if that is the height of what you can do, then that's not a criticism. That's just an encouragement to kind of trying to weed through those sort of bits as well. So I think that's everything. Anything else left to mention before we stop recording?
No, I think that's it.
Fantastic.
Woo!
Well, thank you, folks. We'll stop recording. And just to remind yourselves that there's the digital church section on our district page, which is maybe where you found this. But yeah, please have a delve and have a look. So thank you. And thank you, Emily.